Thank you, and good day, everybody. Let me first answer the question why I am here, and I think all of us are here. We are here to enhance and start collaboration and cooperation. We are here because match fixing creates a big threat towards sports of today. According to Interpol, there are open files in match fixing in over 70 countries in all the continents of the world. And Interpol also added that their reports are not perfect. Their statistics is not perfect. I would like to start telling a little bit of the work what is being done in the Council of Europe. Don't get obsessed if you come from other continents of the world. Council of Europe is not European Union. Council of Europe is an intergovernmental organization in Europe, and it has drafted 3 other conventions concerning sports, one of them being the Council of Europe anti-doping one of those anti-doping conventions. It was done in '89 already. And because of that, worldwide UNESCO anti-doping convention was finished in only 2 years. That's the world record in UN settings to have an international convention. Council of Europe convention is also an open convention. In Europe we have some plus 40 countries taking part to drafting that convention. And I'm also happy to inform you all that already Japan, Australia and Canada are taking actively part to the drafting of this convention. Obviously, when match fixing is the biggest threat towards the sports of today, the purpose of the convention is to prevent, detect and combat national or transnational manipulation of national or international sport competitions. Purpose is also to promote national and international cooperation against the manipulation of sports competitions between the public authorities concerned as well as with the relevant bodies or organizations, particularly those of representing sports movement and sports betting operators. This morning we heard about values and the importance of values. Values of this convention you could put in a few words, telling that the values are respecting human rights, sport ethics, lawfulness, proportionality, protection of private life and personal data, and respecting the autonomy of sports movement. Back to collaboration and cooperation. I think it was just after the professor's talk somebody said that, and rightly so, I think it was you who said that intervention meant also that regulators need to cooperate amongst themselves. But here I would ask you to consider a wider cooperation, of course, between yourself. But this is a horizontal problem. There are no vertical solutions to this horizontal problem. That's why in this work, to safeguard the integrity of sport, you need public authorities, and I could add it means ministries of sport, law enforcement and regulators. You need, secondly, sports movement, and you need betting operators, being those private or state lotteries. And this is the only way to form up, as we call it in a draft convention, national platforms, which would be then able to coordinate the efforts nationally, and then of course to be able to exchange information with other platforms to make it international. So we need a wide cooperation to solve this problem. That's why today in the panelists we have all these components, if I may say so, represented. Pâquerette Girard-Zappelli is representing the Olympic movement. Costanzo is representing the betting operators. And Nick, your colleague, is representing the public authorities and specifically the regulators. And I would like to give them now a floor to tell how do they see their role in this collaboration, because I can assure you there's no other way than to cooperate with all the three elements I mentioned. So, Pâquerette, I would like to ask you to give your presentation to us, please.
Thank you very much. First, I turn my eyes to you, Madam. I would like to thank again IAGR for having given me the opportunity on behalf of the sports movement for the second time to address the issue of match fixing via sport during your convention and your annual General Assembly. Last year, for those of you who were participating to this meeting, I really stressed along on the question of the risks and the problems that sports integrity are confronted with. This year, I would like to stress on the need to act now, not in the future, but right now. I hope you will agree to support the sports movement in its fight against match fixing linked to betting activities. I just want to make a small back to what had been said this morning by the professor of economy, and who longly mentioned how important is when we are confronted to global transnational reality, how important it's cooperation between stakeholders. And that is an example exactly of what we have to do. So, what we have to do and what we try to do. Sports betting is a reality, as I just mentioned, and attempt to support integrity all around the world on all sport is also a reality. I don't want to get back on this because you probably also read this almost every morning when you are opening your newspaper. Sport did its part and is still doing its part, notably by setting up strong rules and procedures, and also by improving all the mechanisms we are having at our disposals. But sports cannot act alone. We definitely need the support, and not only the support of the betting operators, but also the support of the betting regulators and the law enforcement agencies at national and international level in order to get the alerts and the information. In fact, sports, as you may know, are totally innocent and without any form of power in order to get evidence and to get proofs about wrongdoing in sports. We are acting in this direction since about 10 years within the Olympic movement. Since the editions in Beijing 2008, we not only have rules and disciplinary process in place, but we strengthened the commitment, personal commitment of the participant to the Olympic Games. And we monitor the betting activities on the whole event of the Olympic Games, which is far more complex than monitoring only a World Cup, because it is more or less 28 World Cup at the same moment, with more than about 10,000 athletes and 30,000 people around the athletes within the village. So it's quite a lot of people we are monitoring. But we are not doing this alone. We are doing this with the support of the betting operators, private, like bwin today present in the room, but also the lotteries. And I know that in certain numbers of your country, the operators is a lottery. So we are also working very actively with the lotteries and also with the national gambling regulators. The first good example was the UK Gambling Commission, to which was added the AGR, the French authority, and I'm sorry that there was no one from France here in the room, AMS, which is the Italian Commission, and different other national regulators such as Malta, Gibraltar, and Belgium. And I definitely hope that those regulators who are already have support us will continue to support us in the new coming games and the major sports events. Of course, we also have education tools for the young, so we are trying to do our best. Just for you as a flavor to see what will be the next rules and for the participant to the Olympic Games, you see there is a lot of prohibition. Basically, they must remain outside of the betting activities, and they also have an obligation to disclose any incident or misuse of the rules. From the London experience, we decided to build up and create an Olympic movement and betting integrity reporting mechanism. Why? And I'm sure Nick will give you some examples, because it creates the opportunity during the London Games, we see it on a daily basis, a trust and confidence between the actors around the table, representative of sports, representative of the UK operators, and UK law enforcement. We were able to discuss any alert, exchange information, exchange intelligence, and to react extremely quickly within hours' time, which is absolutely necessary when we are confronted to attack to sports integrity. This was largely possible due to the support of the UK Gambling Commissions, so you can consider how important the support of the regulator is for the sports organizations. After London, the IOC agreed to financially support the extent of this exchange of alert and information mechanism, not only to his events, the Olympic Games, but outside of the time of the Olympic Games for the benefit of the other sports, major sports competition and the international federation, which in the large majority are not having the finance like FIFA or UEFA does to have its own protection mechanism. So that is a new mechanism, Olympic Movement Betting Integrity Reporting Mechanism. As you may know, this reporting mechanism is based on the national regulators. What the aim of it is to be able to exchange information, to get the information that you are having from the activities in your betting activities in your countries, or what you are having on the betting activities or your national operators, and for you also being a contact with a national law enforcement agency with which you are used to work and to be in contact when you are actively be a regulator in your country. So this is why and how this mechanism is working during the Games and how we would like to have it more global and more extended around the globe. The advantage of this is to simplify the connection between the international sports federation. You probably know certain names. Some of you, of course, you know football, FIFA, but you probably know IRB from rugby, or some also know the ICC, International Cricket Council. But you are not aware about all the other sports international federations. So this is a opportunity for you to get in contact directly with the world of sports. And it is for us to be a sort of central point so that it makes easier the connection between the different stakeholders. And this is the way we work during the games, and it is the way we would like to have it working outside of the games. Concretely, regulators, operators will sign only one MOU with the IOC as well as the IFs, and the monitoring competition, the monitored competition will be, of course, the Olympic Games, but also in certain numbers of international competitions, World Championship or World Cup. The Olympic movement betting integrity reporting mechanism will aggregate the different information, pass on to the federation or pass on to the question from the federation to the regulators, and provide technical analysis. Just for you to have a short view on a small chart, you see that is a star style design, but you can really see how important the regulators are in this network, because you are those who are helping and making possible the connection with sports ministers and law enforcement agencies. Of course, we are now starting a pilot project. This morning, I heard that the ladies are used to have a different approach from the men. I don't know exactly what does it cover, but for me, personally, want to have a pragmatic approach. And the pragmatic approach is to give the opportunity to start this mechanism, to make it live and live for at least 4 years until the next edition of the Summer Games in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and to see how it works, how it can be improved, and so on. So it is a plan for 4 years, as you can see, and I'm definitely sure that in 4 years' time, at least for the sports side, we will consider that the support of the regulators and more the support of the regulators is a key in this process. I don't know if you have had the opportunity to look at the new version of the agenda, but I think in the end of the afternoon, I will be back in this room, and I will be pleased to give you more details on what an MOU means, what is it in the content, because it's practical. What I would like today and the day tomorrow is to leave Oslo with a certainty that new numbers of regulators will be part of this process, because you certainly want to be part of this only and sole mechanism, efficient one, to support the sports integrity in your country as well as worldwide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Pâquerette. Just wanted to remind us all that this is not rocket science, but it doesn't make it any more simplistic. To create a legally binding framework as convention is, of course, a sum up of very, very different ideas from different parts of the world. But let's don't forget the focus, to safeguard the integrity of sport and to catch the cheaters. There will be also criminal law provisions in that convention. And that means that we need to be able to collaborate, despite of the differences in legal culture of your country. And now Pâquerette mentioned that this platform. So of course they are national platforms first, and you may build it in a way you like. Hopefully in that building up you would take care that all the three elements are there. Public authorities, betting operators, and sports. Then you're certainly going to be successful and be able to be part of the international network. And next, I would like to give the floor to Antonio Costanzo, who represents the operators in this context.
Thank you. Thank you, Harri. Good afternoon, everybody. Today I represent the EGBA, the RGA, and ESA. The EGBA is European Gaming and Betting Association, based in Brussels. The RGA is a remote gaming association based in the UK, in London. And ESA is the European Sports Security Association, which is the industry's monitoring tool, which is also based in Brussels. Allow me, although we have already gone into the details of what the industry, together with sports and together with regulators, can do, thanks to Pâquerette, allow me to take a step back and try to explain why, from our perspective, the implication of regulators within this discussion and within this action is necessary and indispensable. When we started the political discussion around integrity in sports, and particularly around integrity related to sports betting activity, it was back in 2008, 2009 in Europe. It was asked to us whether we thought there was a way forward, whether we saw something we could all do together. We proposed a solution which is exactly, I'm not saying that because I want to praise myself, but it is exactly the direction that the political environment has taken. So a solution which is based on 4 pillars: regulation, education, control, and sanctions. And the most important pillar of all is regulation, because without regulation and without regulators, it is useless to educate anybody, or it is very difficult to educate anybody, especially in the short run. Controls are ineffective, and sanctions are simply impossible. The role of the regulator is extremely important to us because it represents the role of the state, the public authority. It is also important that when we talk about regulation, we talk about countries that do not have a regulation in place for sports betting, and we urge those countries to put a regulation in place, or those countries who do have a regulation in place, but it's a limited one, to consider enlarging that regulation. Why is that? Because if you look at the figures, those are slightly old figures, 2010, but I use those figures because they are still the figures that are reliable today. We do not have any updated figures that are as reliable as these ones. If you look at the figures, in 2010-11, the global sports betting market was worth, in terms of GGR, around $18 billion around the world. 11 billion of those were considered to come from the online sector. So a majority of that came from the online sector. Now, the largest unregulated betting markets at the time were considered to be China, the US, and Asia altogether, going from 10 billion GGR in China up to 50 billion GGR if you consider Asia altogether. So 18 billion to, in this case, if you pile them up, 80 billion altogether. So a ratio of 1 to 6, more or less. One example for all, the US. In the US, only Nevada allows, and Delaware, if I'm not mistaken, but Nevada certainly operates sports betting activity in the casino, in the land-based casinos. But the US government considers that there is 99% of the market which is today unregulated, meaning that it goes through either unregulated online channels, or it goes through unregulated offline physical channels. The total market in the US, consider $20 billion. Now, what does it mean? It means that in the US, in China, in Asia, in other parts of the world where there is no regulation or no regulator which has its hands on the topic, there is no real control of what is going on. Nobody knows exactly who's doing what, who's placing the money, where the money comes from, where the money goes, and who is placing the money. Regulation, as I said at the beginning, is the key element to the entire process. And it is not only said by us, but it is said also by those who tried and managed in the past to fix sports events through sports betting to make money, to monetize it through sports betting. The latest news came, I think, 3-4 days ago in Singapore. There was the news of the arrest of a group of people. 13 or 14 people were arrested in Singapore. They are considered to be the criminal organization that is responsible for almost 90% of the match-fixing cases that we had around the world in the past 3-4 years, which is an extremely good news for us because it means that hopefully we haven't solved the problem, certainly, but we have solved a big chunk of the problem, of the existing problem. The interesting thing is that the entire process that led to the arrest of these people in Singapore started in Europe. It started in Finland, in Hungary, in Italy, where prosecutors, thanks to national laws that allow them to prosecute and to investigate in match-fixing cases, managed to investigate, to speak to people, to go abroad, to collaborate with other jurisdictions, and in the end issue an arrest warrant, an international arrest warrant, which was enacted by Interpol and then the police in Singapore. What do we do on our side? The sports betting associations or the sports betting operators, the regulated ones around the world, we set up our own system, which is called ESSA, as I mentioned, European Sports Security Association. The lotteries have similar systems in place, both at European and at worldwide level. We are talking together to make sure that we can combine those systems into something that is more reliable and effective. What we do today is that we offer our free services to any regulator in the world that wishes to have reliable information and transactional information about the activity that we cover in the different jurisdictions. We do that with regulators in the countries where we have licenses, of course. In certain cases, it is an obligation. But we also do that on a voluntary basis with countries and regulators in which we do not have licenses. The fact that we're not licensed in South Africa, for instance, does not mean that ESSA is not willing to work with the South African regulator to exchange information on the activity that we see in other jurisdictions, in other countries. And we strongly urge all regulators to join this international movement that is moving forward, is already active. The risk there, if some of the regulators decide not to join this movement, is that those regulations become the weak point in the system. They become the place, they become the nation, the state, where match fixers might try to go and base themselves in order to carry on their activity. Why? Because the regulator is at the center of the entire system. It's the connecting point to sports betting operators, and to law enforcement agencies. What are the keys to an effective collaboration? Very simple keys. I think they could be applied to many other sectors, but we all have in mind the protection of the consumer. In the end, it's all about that, protecting the consumer from a regulator's perspective, from a sports betting operator perspective. Identifying priorities. Very often we've seen in certain countries regulators unfortunately going into the wrong direction for a number of reasons. Speak the same language. Again, I think an exercise such as the Convention of the Council of Europe can be very helpful in that direction. Exchange views and information, and evidence-based decision-making process. I cannot stress it enough. We are very open to any kind of discussion, but we would like it to be evidence-based and not principle-based, because principles can be applied, of course, but they need to be confronted with reality and with the evidence that we have in our hands. And we have a lot of evidence, because working online, and this is my last statement, the advantage that the development of the online gambling world has given to operators and to regulators is that online everything is traced and traceable in a regulated environment. Therefore, you have all the information, all the transactional data that you need in order to carry out investigations and to pass it on to law enforcement agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio. And now, last but not least, Nick Tofiluk, whom I hope you know him, because he's been a very active member of the Council of Europe drafting group in this respect, and have brought the valuable input from UK Gambling Commission and regulatory body. Nick, please.
Thank you very much. You're going to hear me repeat some of the messages that have been said before. Although I stand here as a regulator, I stand here representing the UK Gambling Commission and reflect upon the learning that I think we have collectively gained from our day-to-day collaborations and our work within such forum as the convention and working with the IOC. But thank you for the opportunity. Let's reprise a little bit. Match fixing is a term increasingly used to describe the criminal corruption of sport, particularly when it's related to profit through betting, but that's not necessarily a prerequisite. Everybody knows there are other corruptions of sport, but when we talk about match fixing, the discussion is primarily linked to that of criminal profit through corrupt and corrupted betting. And it's not a phenomenon that's new. You can find stories of it going back in all sorts of sport for hundreds of years, and I think there's one example I saw that actually takes it back to Roman times as well. So actually this is nothing new, but actually it's not something that's going to go away either. There have always been people with criminal intent, whether in large or small measure, who will seek to exploit the vulnerabilities of sportsmen and women and those that have influence in sport. They'll seek to circumvent the controls and the efforts of legitimate bookmakers to keep crime out of gambling, and they'll seek to establish new forms of corrupting opportunity in sport and in sports betting. I was thinking in terms of, I think it's Dr. Nordstrom's comments this morning about the manipulate and protect what you have and create new opportunities. And I think this is a classic example where that in a criminal context is evident. I suppose what's changed is that in the last 2 to 3 years, the issue has gained much a higher profile than it ever has done before. And there's no doubt that match fixing is clearly seen as a national threat by many jurisdictions with pretty obvious international dimensions, primarily due to the global nature of sports, sports betting, and of course the technology that enables that to take place. So what's the evidence for this growing increase? We've heard from the IOC that perceives the threat to be global in scope and is bringing forward plans at national, international, regional, and also not mentioned through the United Nations. We've heard that European governments are collectively working through the Council of Europe to develop a convention that recognises the need for action at national and international levels and places the regulatory authorities at the heart of that effort. We know that national governments are establishing strategies and resourcing efforts to bring together regulators, sports operators, law enforcement. And I would use Australia as possibly the most recent and obvious example, where they have put together a federal and national approach to this issue. And you'll see reports of their efforts in most papers most weeks. Interpol is devoting resources to prevention work with FIFA and operational coordination and capability development through their international match-fixing task force, to which operators contribute, to which regulators contribute. Commercial betting operators realise that in addition to their individual responsibilities, as we've heard, they're prepared to work together through national and international associations, engaging with regulators and other international efforts. Regulators, I think, are increasingly seeking assurance from licensed operators, part of the regulatory regime, that the operators have the capability to protect the interests of their customers from the likelihood of criminal exploitation, and that is best facilitated in most cases by meaningful dialogue with the operators and promoting the operator's responsibility for managing risk. Regulators are putting in place arrangements to facilitate the information of sharing between regulators themselves, between sport, law enforcement and the operators. And finally, law enforcement are increasingly focused on the need to reduce the criminal profitability and increase the risk of punishment to those that engage in such corruption. So apart from that, there's not a lot going in on the subject. But why? So what is the issue that brings all this effort to the fore? Well, first of all, let's count the costs. The costs in terms of the ethos of sport, I've heard it derived as the glorious unpredictability, which I think was an IOC term, that engages present and future generations of participant and observer and their legitimate commercial interests. the costs to the legitimate commercial interests of those that provide the facility to wager, to the fairness of the bettor, and to the employment of thousands in legitimate business activity. The costs to society of failing to discourage criminal enterprise, reduce criminal influence and profit, that can, in extreme, pollute the fabric of a country through money laundering and corrupt governance. And finally, the costs to national reputation for countries, for their fairness, of their regulatory effectiveness, of being safe places to bet and do business, and of being safe places to stage competitions, and having a desire and a drive to address the issue. When you look at the activities that we're concerned about, there are those that will seek undoubtedly to profit through opportunistic acts. But there are others, as we've heard, that are organised across international boundaries and who see profiting through the manipulation of sport and sports betting as a low-risk criminal enterprise. We must not underestimate the capability and harmful consequences of both. And experience indicates that criminals are knowledgeable about sport, about individual susceptibility to exploitation and extortion, about betting markets and the mechanisms of betting markets and the movement of money. These people utilise global cyber environment, operate across the boundaries of both sport and countries, and will seek to frustrate the efforts to prevent and deter, whether it be by regulators or law enforcement or sport. They are resilient. Just focusing on our experience in Britain, it's more than 3 years since we established our initial approach to addressing the threat to the integrity of sports betting and sports competition. And we believe that to identify, prevent and deter the risks related to match fixing, national approaches need to be intelligence-led and intelligently focused through collaboration with the key actors. I think it reasonable to say that our learning to date is consistent with those others that we've engaged, namely that sports betting operators, betting regulators and law enforcement must join to do a number of certain key things. Firstly, to understand how sports betting and sports competitions are actually corrupted. Secondly, to identify and tackle specific individuals who would corrupt by every means possible, and we must not necessarily rely upon criminal prosecution. There are opportunities to disrupt that go begging for the want of somebody to put their mind to how that can be achieved. We need to protect those in sport and elsewhere who could be corrupted by developing their individual and collective resistance to temptation and enable them to be safe in disclosing their concerns. We've learnt that aligning the work of the gambling regulator, the betting operator, sports governing and law enforcement needs to be based upon a clear common goal within the national context. And finally, we know that no man is an island, particularly Britain. 1/3 of all the referrals that we receive have the betting, the person about whom we're concerned, and the event in Britain. 2/3 of all the information we receive has at least one of those elements offshore. So working across international boundaries is absolutely critical to the future of our individual enterprise. As has been said, the concept of the national platform, which is at the heart of the convention, is an expectation that states that sign up to the convention will best determine for themselves how to align the efforts of regulators, law enforcement, operators, and the public authorities. I firmly believe there is no one way that will work, and the national context and national policies have to be taken into consideration. Events like this provide an invaluable opportunity to see this, and IAGR has an invaluable opportunity to contribute to the understanding of what works in what contexts. As I've said, how this capability is initiated and continually delivered is the challenge of regulators within the context of a concept of a national platform. And I urge you, whether you belong to a European state or not, to look at the work that's going on with the Council of Europe, because the Convention itself is a framework for action. It allows for different approaches based on different needs. The other reality is that the role of the regulator within this national platform will depend upon the powers given, the mandates provided, whether to act as the facilitator of information exchange, the central point of developing intelligence from communication with sport and other agencies, the investigator of criminal acts, or the facilitator of expert support for law enforcement. And whilst at the present moment there is no evidence that in the UK we have fallen prey to the systemic corruption and widespread activity of organised crime that has blighted some sports, we are ever mindful that we cannot afford to be complacent and pretend that this could not exist or that the UK is immune from external influence. There are examples of what one might describe as opportunistic threats that need to be continually addressed. And as I said, some of these have an international context. And a number of you in this room today will know that we've had to speak with you regarding our approach to dealing with that. As we have created a sports betting intelligence unit within the regulatory body, within the Commission, that focuses on being the intelligence hub, enabling decisions by ourselves and partners, and acting as a deterrent by making clear there is continual vigilance. Its approach has been influential, I think, not only in making a difference within Britain, but I believe has assisted within the international context. But I do not say that this is the right way for every country to approach this. And at our heart is an expectation that sport does its part, that betting operators do their part. And as I've said, that we take opportunities not only to prosecute by support for law enforcement, but we expect the opportunities to disrupt criminal activity to be presented and taken as best we can. We also put great effort into exchanging as much information that we can within the confines of the constraints of the law. And we will, wherever possible, share as much information as we can with sports governing body in support of their internal disciplinary procedures. The reality is, in many cases, sports governing bodies are more effective and more timely and more resource effective or efficient in actually curtailing the activities of those within the sports themselves than criminal prosecution is ever likely to be. Deterrence activity can be delivered through robust application of appropriately focused sports rules, but sports must have a willingness and a capability to establish appropriately focused codes, investigate and apply sanction. And as the regulator, one of the roles I think we can play is to facilitate and support sport in their endeavours. So the concept of a national platform is about collaboration. It's about that mutual support, it's about information exchange, it's about developing capability. I think we have made some good progress. We have a confidential telephone line for public, sportsmen and women, betting operators. We work with sport, betting operators, law enforcement through a managed meeting process and bilateral engagement. We support sports in developing awareness education programs and improving their investigation capabilities. We work with operators to understand and improve their risk management arrangements. We have improved and extended access to quicker time betting information from operators, associations and technology. We have international connections with regulators that allows high level and effective exchange of information. And we work with law enforcement agencies in Britain and abroad. It's good progress, but as I said, we're not complacent. We also realise that we are a small part of the jigsaw. For all the information that helps us deal with our own internal problems, we believe that we have as much information that can help others deal with their problems. And similarly, we believe that others in Europe and around the world can continue to assist us in being more effective. I suppose it's a little bit trite to end with a quote, but it was a quote that seems to work. And we've always believed that the strength of the team is each individual. The strength of each member is the team itself. I think the platform is that co-aligned alignment of people focused upon a common goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. While you were speaking, I received the Interpol report, news around the world, and it was reported that New Zealand Olympic Committee has made a decision to develop an integrity unit. I hope that, Graham, your group will be part of those discussions as well. I would like to ask first of the audience, does any of you represent a country where you have started to think about national platform, whether that's still an official name of it, but the cooperation between sports, public authorities and betting operators? Does any one of you come from a part of the world where you have those? Please raise your hand. And well, Norway and Finland. Anybody else? Orderly, good. And of course, would like to know your experience of the cooperation up till now. What would you miss still on this? And of course, it's good that it starts at the national level, but of course we need to build an international network to be able to tackle the problem. So Norway, would you like to tell a little bit what you have done here? And then I will give you.
Well, I should bring with me, but we have made a Norwegian act plan against max fishing. It was based on a case last summer. We had a match-fixing case in the second level of football. Afterwards, we started working very quickly with an act plan. And a part of the act plan is a sort of national platform. It's a cooperation group. We have just established, but we have 2 meetings. And the Gaming Authority and the Department of Culture, the Police Department, and also the sports organization is a part of that platform. I think we have a good start. And this meeting is also, they are all invited here. Some of them are here. The department is here. And hopefully we're getting on with the work. Okay?
Thank you. I think really this is a horizontal problem. Don't seek vertical solutions to a horizontal problem. So Nick and Antonio and also Pâquerette, I would just like to ask, how do you detect the crime or possible crime? Or how do you detect illegal betting patterns, etc.? Antonio.
From a sports betting operator perspective, we cannot detect crime or we cannot detect illegal betting. What we can detect and what we do detect is irregular betting and sometimes suspicious betting. So if we see something that is irregular compared to our normal standards, more money going to one direction than usual, a team being backed where there is no real reason to it, we will look into that situation, that specific market, and try to understand why that has happened. It could be simply because there was news out that one of the players was injured, or that the manager decided to rest some of the players and hence he put a B squad on the pitch. If we cannot explain why there is an irregular betting pattern, then we consider it as a suspicious betting pattern, and this is when we pass on the information to sports or to the regulator wherever we have agreements in place or an obligation as an operator in a specific country.
Well, the question was intentional because I wanted to show that betting operators cannot do it alone. I mean, you can take the issue to a certain point, but then you need regulators, you need police, you need law enforcement, you need sports. Pâquerette.
What I wanted to stress it is another angle of the problem. A sports organization may see on a field of play that there is something which is going wrong. Definitely an athlete or a team or two teams or two athletes who are not doing their best, obviously not doing their best. And then there are two ways of looking at this. Either we say, okay, it is a sports strategy. They decide because there is no really risk, sports risk for them in this competition, not to do their best, not to risk any injury for the future competition. Or we might think, oh, maybe they are losing because they have decided to lose, and someone is betting on this competition, and maybe the athlete is himself or herself betting to make money on the back of his or her competition. Two examples there. This is not theory. One was during the London Games, where we had a problem with 4 teams in badminton, and the Joint Assessment Unit put in place with Nick and the UK Gambling Commissions, we were able in less than 24 hours to answer to the request from the sports movement and to say, no, it was only tactical decision made by the athletes and the coaches. They were sanctions, but only on the disciplinary level, of course, not on another level. The second example is a French handball story a year ago. They were at the end of the national championship, and those clubs who were definitely the winner decided to lose. Okay. But they also, 4 of the men of the team decided to bet on this and to make a lot of money on this. Then it became not only on the criminal side, which is today the decision is not finalized in France, but on the sports side is totally different, because you are cheating to making money on your sport. You can of course understand that ethically that is really more serious, and that is what we want to detect, and that we cannot do without the support of the betting operators and the regulators. So that's definitely why it is so important to have just support. In certain countries, the regulators are direct, like in England or in France, you are having a direct contact and a sort of control and discussion with the operators. In other countries, not. So it's important to get all those participants within the loop, within this discussion, and that's the why of the Olympic movement reporting mechanism.
Thank you, Pâquerette. Nick, you mentioned something that it's not always easy to persuade law enforcement to be active on this, because sometimes you might get the reaction that this is a low risk and this is kind of a pocket theft and not a serious crime. Some thoughts about this kind of thinking?
I think that's right, Harry. Match fixing has to be seen by law enforcement in the context of the other priorities that they're set. And our experience is that within Britain there is little opportunity of having potential cases taken seriously if we don't put in the groundwork and sufficient groundwork to demonstrate what the scale and scope of the criminality is. We also engage with the police and law enforcement agencies on the basis of encouraging them to think at the outset that in actual fact sharing information at the earliest opportunity with sports governing bodies may in actual fact be a parallel strategy. And what I mean by that is that if we've had cases where perhaps 4 or 5 people could be subject of criminal inquiry, but perhaps 2 or 3 of them are at the minor end of sort of suspicion, where it's possible that the sports governing body may actually be in a position to deal with those individuals while the police look to take the wider and perhaps organising capability to task. Now, this is culturally very difficult for the police, and as an ex-police officer I know that we are not, or the police have not been in the past, particularly used to sharing information during criminal inquiries. But the reality is you have to be fleet of foot. You have to realise that this issue needs to appeal to the priorities that exist. But at the same time, we've done a lot of work to make sure that the risks associated with corrupt sports betting are beginning to be in the mindset of the British law enforcement agencies, and in particular around the threat to British national interests. The other point is that we are very keen, where possible, to disrupt. Sometimes criminal prosecution is possible, and the police will consider that, but it's also sometimes very opportune to actually stop the activity, and in so doing you may actually lose the opportunity to prosecute. And that's a decision that you can only come to if you have the appropriate information to make the right decision in the right circumstances. So challenging traditional thinking about the way to deal with, on the face of it, what is a criminal activity is a major challenge and continues to be so.
Thank you, Nick. And we had an intervention from the audience, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm from the Alderney Gambling Control Commission, and we work very closely with the UK Gambling Commission, and we have a memorandum of understanding with them and with a lot of operators, because for us the exchange of information is absolutely critical if irregular patterns of betting are detected and there are individuals concerned in that betting who may be part of the sports on which the betting is taking place. There are now increasingly in the UK, and I think in other countries too, rules which ban for example, footballers from betting on matches in the competitions in which they're taking part, not just in the games they're taking part, but on the competitions they're taking part. And it is very important that if the betting operators are aware that they are receiving bets from people who are covered by these agreements with their own governing bodies, that is passed on and that the Gambling Commission and Nick's team are able to investigate. It isn't just match fixing that is of concern, it is in fact cheating. And you may well not be influencing the outcome of a match if you are taking a bet on what time you're going to put the ball out of play and get a throw in, or when you're going to receive a yellow card from a referee. That probably won't affect the outcome, but you are still cheating. You have got an advantage over other members of the public who are not privy to that information, and it is important from the point of view of the integrity of betting itself and for the punters in betting that they are given an equal chance as much as possible. Things go on in sport which you know about, which if it happened in the money markets or in the cities, then you'll find that people would go to jail for insider trading. We don't go as far as that. We don't go as far as that in sport, but we need to be much, much more concerned about people taking advantage of information which is specific to them and where they are able to get the advantage over others.
Thank you. That's I fully agree what you just said, and betting on your own sports, etc., will be handled also in this convention naturally. And as I said, one of the guiding principles or values is, of course, ethics. Good governance, ethics have a lot to do with this issue. Then I do think that, there was the gentleman there, please.
I'm Oka Keizer from the National Gambling Board of South Africa. I'd like to know those people that were arrested in Singapore, do they now get delivered to the country that asked Interpol, or do they get prosecuted in Singapore? And are the penalties the same?
I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I understood from the press reports, they will be prosecuted in both countries. And the penalties, no, they're not the same. Actually, they will be prosecuted in Singapore for their criminal organization activities as a criminal organization, and fraud in particular, whereas in Italy, there is a specific crime, which is sports corruption in sport. So they will be prosecuted for that.
By the way, in this Australian case, we saw the same syndicate. You probably have heard about the soccer or football case in Australia. Have you heard about that? No. One of the things being that, there were a few guys who went from England to play there and to fix matches, and police and the National Integrity Unit of Sport was aware of that, and also National Football Association, and they tapped the phones. And one of the phone calls those guys get the instructions came from Hungary, from custody of Mr. Wilson Rai Perumal, who was there helping the police to solve the Hungarian problem. So this is just to show that it's really, they do whatever they can to cause problems. I have here news about Singapore, but I will not start reading it now. It just came with the Interpol report as well. I had there, yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to find out to what extent has these various bodies really gone in terms of making sure that the 3-tier that you mentioned earlier on, that is educate, regulate, and sanction, they have gone in addressing specifically this issue. Because what it appears that you are trying to do here is to mimic exactly what's happening in the financial markets. Now, in the financial markets in various jurisdictions, there are stringent rules in terms of how people can be able to trade on securities and all that. And the measures that are imposed in, if you're found wanting in terms of contravening any of those provisions, yes, are very dire. But still, there's a serious issue in terms of sanctioning, even if people sometimes are found to have committed insider trading. Now, coming to what we are trying to do here, now, with various legal jurisdictions with different legal permutations, how are you going to make sure that if a particular incident has happened, that you have adequate legislative mechanisms in those particular jurisdictions to ensure that you satisfy at least the latter part of your 3-tier, which is the sanctioning? I'm not seeing that coming out in clarity in your presentation there.
Well, I might try to tell you one example. First of all, there will be criminal law provisions in the Council of Europe Convention. And of course, then the state parties who will join to that convention will have to have a legislation in place against manipulation of sport results or sports competitions. Then it's up to of course, the sentence may vary. For example, in my country at the moment, the maximum sentence is 4 years. At the moment in Australia, the maximum sentence is 10 years. But at least in every EU country, there is a law in place. But of course, we need to raise awareness. What is match fixing? What is the manipulation of sport competitions? But when this convention will be signed by member states or state parties, so they are obliged to apply the criminal law sanctions to that. Of course, this still may vary the length of the judgment, but in that sense, it will be in the convention. Pâquerette, you wanted to say?
What I would like to add is that you are two different types of sanctions. One is criminal sanction, of course. It is under the jurisdictions of the state's law enforcement agencies, police and justice. But then you also have the disciplinary sanction. For an athlete, disciplinary sanction, that's the problem. And today, sports organizations are having strong rule in place. They are also having quite important and good education tools to raise the awareness of the athletes, coach, entourage of the athletes, all the people surrounding the athletes, and they are also having strong disciplinary measures and sanctions, which are going to a life ban. Today in tennis, football, there are quite a number of examples of life ban for athletes, for coach, and both for cheating during the competition or part of the result, but also for disclosure of internal information which is used to make money, with exactly the same mechanism as we are having in financial internal information to be disclosed and used to make financial activities. So these are in place. Of course, I will not tell you that this is to solve all the problems, but we are doing our best today. But definitely what we need, as in terms of sports organization, is we need the access to the information and the access to the regulators having a good knowledge of the rules in the country, having the good possibility to make a link with the law enforcement in the countries, with all the betting operators in the countries. That's why you as regulators are so important for us.
Just another actual news is, as you might be aware of, that Stephen Lee got a 12-year ban from the sports of snooker for match fixing.
Which is almost life ban.
Yeah,
I have
please.
a quick question. It might be directed at Nick, perhaps, with his police hat on. It's to do with, would match fixing be considered a predicate offence for money laundering purposes? And if so, would the winnings that are arising from a fixed match on a betting site be subject to a suspicious activity report and potential freezing and seizure by the financial intelligence unit or law enforcement in that country?
You save the easy questions to last, I say. The offence of match fixing may not exist, and certainly doesn't exist in British law as match fixing. In fact, one of the pieces of work that was done in preparation for the convention was a type of gap analysis in terms of what are the capabilities within different states as to be able to prosecute successfully an offence of corruption related to sports betting. And it's fair to say that in some states there was no applicable law. And in some states they've taken the decision to create a specific match-fixing offence. In the case of the UK, we would rely upon, and we do rely upon, as we've shown with has been shown with the prosecution of the case relating to the Pakistani Test cricketers and the individual cricketer whose name has just gone straight out of my head. But we use an analysis done by the Ministry of Justice and the Home Office for Great Britain said that our bribery, corruption, cheating offences, extortion offences that are already on the criminal statute are applicable to corrupt sports betting and corrupting of sport. As such, with the exception of cheating per se, they are predicate offences for money laundering. And therefore, as part of a criminal prosecution, I would expect the police or whichever law enforcement agency was investigating them to be thinking at the outset of any money laundering related confiscations, seizures, etc. So, yeah.
Other comments or questions from the audience? Gentleman from South Africa.
Yes, I'd like to know, do I get my money back if I bought a ticket to go and watch it?
Another easy question right at the end. I don't know the answer to that, in actual fact. I think it's, as a general response, it would be unlikely. But the principle is recognised. And that goes to the heart of perhaps what I think I was trying to say right at the outset. Why are people so vexed about the issue? It is because it's fundamentally unfair to everybody. It's unfair to people that bet. It's unfair to people that pay what is now quite a lot of money to see top sporting events. If they're not getting that fair play to which is that at the heart of, lies at the heart of true sport, then you have every right to feel cheated and every right to feel that you should have your money back.
Well, this was exactly what I wanted to emphasize as well. First of all, here we are fighting against organized crime. That is the fact, and it has to be taken seriously. Sports cannot do that alone. Betting operators cannot do it alone. You need the collaboration and good operation between public authorities and betting operators and sports. That's the fact. And that has to be taken seriously. Another fact is, think about hundreds of millions of people who enjoy sports. If it will be ruined by match fixing, that will be devastating for so many millions and hundreds of millions of people. So that's why we need to take this seriously. And of course, the convention is not only about tackling the criminal behavior, it's also educating athletes and their entourage. It's a lot of elements in that. And of course, one of the vital elements is, I can't emphasize it enough, is international cooperation. It has to be based on mutual understanding. It has to be based on horizontal cooperation between the different players in this field. And that's the only way to be able to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. You might ask, we still have a few minutes time, so please.
My question is...
You need a microphone, yeah.
My question is, do the three members of our excellent panel believe that the growth of in-play betting is threatening the integrity of sport?
I may start, since I'm representing the betting operators. No, we do not believe that, and there is no evidence to prove that. Actually, the studies that have been conducted so far, and maybe Nick can say something more from the UK perspective, have shown that there is no increase in match fixing cases since live betting has been introduced, for two reasons. Number one, because if you look at the confirmed match fixing cases that we know about, 97% of them, I don't have the exact figures in mind, related to the final result of the match or to the exact number of goals. The reason for that is that most of those people who were fixing the event and then placing money on it were doing so in Asia. In Asia, punters are used to gamble in what is called Asian betting. Asian betting is a specific type of sports betting which cancels the draw. Basically, you either win or you lose. Hence, the fact that there is a predominant number of cases where the final result of the match is the target. Also because it is there that there is enough liquidity, so enough money available in order to try and make up for the money that you've spent in order to fix the event. On a in-play bet, who gets the next corner kick, you will never make the money necessary in order to fix that specific event. And as an operator, when we offer live betting, on small bets such as who gets the next corner kick, we will always accept much, much, much less money than we accept for the final result of an event or the outright winner of a competition. I can give you an example for a bet such as who will get the next corner kick. If we get bets above 50 euros, that will trigger an alert in our system. Because nobody's going to, if someone bets on who's going to get the next corner kick, it's because he wants to have fun. It's because he's watching the game and he wants to place a small bet. If it goes above 50 euros, then for us it's an alert immediately.
Nick, you want to?
I think as a general statement, I don't think there's any compelling evidence that it is a major risk over and above that which Antonio has said. There have been cases where, particularly within snooker springs to mind, where individual matches within the whole game have been targeted. But in response to your direct question, I don't feel that it's actually the critical threat that some people would have us believe that it is.
Thank you, Nick. Pâquerette, you wanted to add to this? Well, now I see that somebody's showing the time to me, and it's time to thank you, thank the panelists. And if I may, and if I may not, I will still say this. So please take the opportunity and talk to this lady later today to discuss about the collaboration and cooperation, which certainly is needed from your side. We need you. Thank you.
I would like to thank the panel. Really interesting. And the audience, I can tell they thought so too. But at 5:30 this afternoon, you will have a new opportunity to hear more about the IOC plans. And you will meet several of these people in here at 5:30. So please welcome them. And I would like to give them a token of our hospitality. It's great.
Yeah.
This picture. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's a 15 minutes break.
Je te laisse quitter. I leave you.